Hi guys, welcome back to Gryphon Studio. Alright, so this week I have changed direction a little bit and I've gone for some kind of Warhammer 40k terrain. For those of you who don't know about Warhammer 40k, just think really grim, post-apocalyptic future, and yeah, that's pretty much the whole thing. So I've made a bit of a escape here with a bit of a building and a pylon and a crater and things like that. A few different techniques used here. I'm inspired by the new Indomitus box that is being released by Games Workshop, and I thought it'd be really cool to make up some 40k terrain for the release of that, because I am pretty hyped. So yeah, that's what I'm making, that's why I'm making it. Let's crack on. Alright, so let's start with the base. I'm going to use some 3mm thick Formex sheet, which is also called expanded PVC, I believe, and it's just a really useful material. It can be carved easily with a craft knife. It's pretty rigid, even when it's only 3mm thick, and it's a great basing material. It also doesn't warp when you apply glues to it. And on top of that, I'm going to put a piece of 10mm thick XPS foam. This is just the standard stuff that I can find here in the UK, and it'll do for what I need it for. Now I'm going to make a kind of blast crater, or kind of a big hole in the floor, so I'm going to use a paint can lid and hopefully just push it through the XPS foam, and that should just pop out. Great way to make circles if you've got no other way to do it. And then I just took my utility knife and carved some irregular shapes into the edge of that to make it look a bit more blast cratery, and then beveled the edges as well so that it would smooth nicely down to the Formex from the XPS foam. Now, as well as a crater, I'm also going to have a small building on this piece. So for that, I'm just grabbing some XPS foam from my offcut bin, and I sliced it up the middle to create a few small, low concrete walls. Now these walls are kind of low and rough looking because they are mostly destroyed, so I'm just going to destroy them a little bit more using a ballpoint pen here, stabbing it through to make some big blast holes. But those holes look a little bit too clean, so just going to pull some bits of foam away with some tweezers to create a bit more of a realistic blast looking effect. And then a few more little stabbies with my tweezers creates a few little bullet holes. I need to remember that there's going to be a door on one of these walls, so I just create an area here just over 1 inch wide for a door, and then I start roughing up these other wall sections just using tweezers, pulling out bits of XPS foam so that it looks like, you know, there's been some shrapnel damage or whatever, and pull away some of the top bit as well so that it becomes jagged and rough, and that'll give a good illusion of mostly destroyed concrete. And then I just use some hot glue to stick down the individual walls. And then I used hot glue to stick down the entire XPS foam base to the Formex base, and now I'm going to apply a little bit of joint filler, just ready mixed from a tub which I got at a local cheap DIY store. And I'm just going to smooth those edges out and really try and blend it in. It's going to go all the way around the side where the XPS foam meets the Formex, and also around the inside of the crater as well, just to create a bit of a nicer, smoother blend. And the texture that it gives there is a handy little bonus. All adds to the effect. And then I just used some Mod Podge and black paint and I covered the entire piece just to seal it and give it a good surface for other things to adhere to. A while ago I made a video on some modern barricades which I can link for you, and these are some of the leftover pieces I had, so I just used some no nails and stuck them down to the piece and scraped away the excess with a coffee stirrer, and then I applied a bit more no nails in various locations just so I could add some remnant pieces of plaster that had come off some other projects. These are quite jagged, quite rough looking pieces, and this is just to simulate the rubble that would have been caused from the destruction of the small building. In retrospect, I probably wouldn't have used plaster because it seemed to come away a little bit in places and break off. It's quite brittle. So if you do plan on making something like rubble, use other methods. If I were you, some other form of ballast, maybe kitty litter or rocks from your garden, even if you break them up with a hammer very carefully. Yeah, I think plaster probably wasn't the best idea. Anyway, then I covered the whole thing in PVA glue and then covered almost the entire thing in sand. This is just my usual basing sand that I use. It's got a bit of a mixture of different grains, and some of them are kind of coarse, some of them, most of them are just kind of fine beach sand. Once dry, you can just tip it up and tap off the excess. And I wanted to simulate some reinforcement bar in this concrete, so I added a few bits of paperclip in various places. I also added a few plastic pieces, like a crate and a barrel, a helmet and a weapon, and some wires and things like that, just to give a little bit more authenticity to the piece. And I undercoated the entire thing fully in black spray primer. Just a normal basic can of spray primer is fine. And I love it when it gets to this kind of undercoat stage because it ties the whole piece together and stops it looking so messy. But now it's time for some paint. So I'm covering all the stone or concrete work in a medium grey. This is going to go over all the walls and the floor on the inside, and on the barricade, bollard sort of things, and on a few little bits of debris around the base as well. Now I was mixing some cheap craft paints together to try and get a good earth colour, but it wasn't really working out and I had to resort to using Vallejo Earth, which is a really nice colour for general mud and dirt, but it's kind of an expensive colour because it comes in a very small pot. So I watered it down pretty heavily and managed to cover the entire base in that. And then I moved on to painting some details, put some green in there and some yellow just to give a bit of colour. And then finally it was time for the wash. So I covered everything, all the stonework, not so much the mud and earth, but all the extra details and things all got covered in my usual black-brown wash. Now, it looked to me that the barrel was pretty much unscathed, even though everything in this entire build was pretty much destroyed. So I wanted to kind of destroy the barrel. I'll put some bullet holes in it at least and rough it up a little bit. So I added a bit of a rust effect using a sponge and some rhinox hide. This is a really good technique. It just brings up a little bit of randomness in that rust effect. And then I added a little bit of silver in lead belcher I used for this, just to add a bit of bare metal to it. And then, because it's going to be an oil barrel, I got some really thick Vallejo black wash, which is like more like a dipping solution actually, and I put this on pretty thick and just made sure it got all over the floor, all over the dirt, and made a really good kind of oily substitute. Now, as well as a crater and a small building, this piece is going to have a pylon, a kind of destroyed pylon. So I've got some L-shaped styrene rod, cut it into different lengths, kind of glued a few bits together, and then squashed the whole thing, burnt it, melted it, kind of really ruined the thing and squashed it into a really horrible twisted shape. And then I got some florist wire, because pylons have wires on them, and I just kind of tethered it to one bit and then wrapped it round, so it just ended up kind of like a big messy pile of twisted metal. And you know what? It looked kind of good already, and then I undercoated it and I was a lot happier. So then I just covered the whole thing in a rusty rhinox hide colour. And then after the rhinox hide, I added some areas of riser rust, and I kind of blended them into the brown of the rhinox hide. And then I kind of highlighted little bits with some lead belcher, which just gives the impression of some fresh metal underneath there. And once I was happy with it, I just had to place it next to the building and glue it down. And now with all the rust in place and all the little details painted, it's really starting to come together. So I added a little bit of PVA glue to the dirt, kind of in patches. Didn't want it to be fully flocked, just a little bit here and there, some between the cracks in the stonework as well. And then I added some flock. This is actually a mixture of dying grass and dead grass, so it's pretty bleak looking. And then I printed out a few signs and posters at home on my printer and just kind of scrunched them up and placed them around the building, and that gave a really cool kind of abandoned feel to it. There we go, guys, all done. So yeah, this is a really interesting build actually. I really quite like this style of terrain. 40k kind of grim dark, future, post-apocalyptic, everything destroyed, general mayhem. I like that. That's really cool. It allows you to create some really dynamic scenery. You know, where you can tell what's happened to a place, which is always really interesting, and they can always tell a good story with some 40k terrain. Yeah, the good thing is about this one is I also got to use a lot of parts that were just lying around the studio. So some plaster bollard bits that were left over from the barricades video quite a while ago. Some plastic bits from the bits box, some styrene rods for the pylon, and just some leftover foam for the building, and that's good, you know, basically turning scrap into usable terrain. I didn't want to over foliage the thing, I wanted it to kind of look a little bit bleak, so yeah, very cool. And obviously rust always helps. Rust is amazing for futuristic terrain. Yeah, perfect. Let me know if you like that kind of whole 40k futuristic terrain thing, and if you'd like to see more of it on this channel. Hopefully I can try and make a few more bits for you. I think I'll be making a few more bits for myself anyway, because I am super hyped for the 9th edition. It is released soon, and the Indomitus box as well, which is on its way soon, hopefully. So yeah, that's going to be really cool. Let me know if you guys are as excited as I am for this whole 9th edition Warhammer 40k release. Let me know what armies you're into, you know what I mean? Leave me messages. I will try and get back to every single person if I can, and hopefully I can maybe create some things that you suggest. Maybe if you leave me ideas, I can tailor whatever I make, maybe steer it towards something that you guys like specifically. So yeah, that's it. If you like this video, if you found it interesting or useful or fun, then let me know in the comments below, and I'll try to reply to everyone. And that's it for this video, I think. I also have Instagram and Facebook. Feel free to follow me on both. The Instagram handle is there. I don't go on Facebook too much, but it's there if you want it anyway. I tend to post my videos on there just in case you aren't on YouTube for the time, so yeah, feel free. But yeah, that's it for this video. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you again next time, and happy crafting.